Okay, it's day 3 of working on the Firebreak before the Tennessee Forestry Department gets started on it. So let's call this the pre-work. And I'm going to work on taking out some of the stumps and working down this area that we previously did all the chainsaw work. So most of these are not pine, so they usually come out pretty easily. So we'll film from inside the cab and show coming through here, making this 10 feet wide, and also making some decisions on when is it easier to get out here and sometimes just kind of clear it by hand versus trying to maneuver a log with the skid steer. I'm not that good with the skid steer yet, so for me, sometimes it's just easier to get out here and kind of move it with your foot or your own 2 hands versus the skid steer. So let's see how today goes. And here's just a couple of quick examples. I'm going to put these along the edge of the Firebreak for either picking up later, but sometimes it's just easier to move something like that by hand than trying to sit there and flip it around with the skid steer. So some of this, it might just be easier to do and faster by hand. But some of these heavy things with the stumps, obviously that's all got to be skid steer. So let's get started.
Now what I'm trying to do here is knock the dirt out of the stump to reduce its weight so that basically the stump is just a branch and most of the dirt is back on the trail. This certainly would be easier with the grapple, which is probably what I will do later when I clean this up. But again, so I can work efficiently and not be switching back and forth from the bucket to the grapple and back again, I do need to move earth, I do need to level the trail, and these trees are literally just a few feet apart, so I would just be constantly taking the bucket off, putting a grapple on. So I'm just going to try and bang them around a little bit with the bucket, get most of the dirt off, and get the path going. And then in the future, when I'm cleaning this up, I could put the grapple on, and if all I'm doing is moving the logs and taking dirt out of the stumps, then the grapple's perfect because I'm already graded. I don't need the bucket. And the grapple will be really good at picking it up, shaking it around, and getting the dirt out of it compared to the bucket. So that's my reasoning at the moment. I still don't have a lot of experience, taking trees out with the skid steer. And so I guess I'm just curious, as you watch some of this, some of you may have done it more. Does it seem like my 75 horsepower is really putting out 75 horsepower? Sometimes some of these trees come out really easy. I know that's a soil condition, but I guess I was kind of under the impression no matter what kind of soil, this thing could just push over anything. And that's definitely not the case, right? With the pine trees, I've definitely shown in other videos where I really had to dig around the roots before I could get a 12 or 14-inch pine tree out of the ground. But some of these other trees, sometimes they're kind of small, and it seems like the machine's straining a bit. And I've read online that some people feel their SVL 75-3s seem weaker than a 75-2. And that maybe the hydraulic bypass safety is set at too low of a setting, therefore robbing your machine of some power. So if you have an opinion on that, I'd love to hear it. And if you did have it and the dealer fixed it for you, what did you have to tell them to have it changed? And for those of you who may be wondering, am I still satisfied with the Land Pride TH35 tilt attachment that allows me to twist the bucket like this? I still love it. I believe it is really helpful. You know, here's a situation where I could turn the corner, go at the roots a little bit. I can do some grading and pick up dirt from one side of the trail, move it to the other side to help flatten things out. It's not a stump bucket capable, so if I turn it really hard and go at the stump with just the corner, it's not as strong as a stump bucket would be, but to me, it just really gives me a lot of flexibility to do a little bit of stump work, a little bit of land grading, move material, grade it, you know, and pitch the trail from the left to the right or right to the left. I just think so far it's one of the most useful attachments that I've gotten. And again, it was about $3,500, and you can see in my YouTube channel there are some other videos of me talking about it in more detail. Notice on this one how it just kind of strained a bit on that one, and you know, again, it obviously pulled it out fine the second time around, but I would have thought I would have gotten it easier the first time. I don't know, maybe I'm just imagining things. The other thing too is just notice how tight, you know, I am trying to, you know, not damage any of the trees that don't need to be taken out. And so I really don't have a ton of room to work in here, even though it's about 10 feet wide, which should give me, you know, a couple of feet on either side of the bucket. I don't have a ton of room. So again, this tilt bucket is really helping me out where I need to grade a little bit, squeeze through and change, you know, the pitch of the path a little bit. I can take a scoop and just dump it from left to right. Again, I'm very happy with this TH35 tilt attachment. So here you can see I came across some buried garbage. It's basically vinyl siding. And this is going to be a case of where I'm going to make a decision here in a little bit that it is just easier to clean this up by hand than deal with it via the bucket. So I got out, piled it out of the way, and now I'll proceed using the machine. yet again, another garbage situation where I decided, yeah, it's easier to get out of the machine and move it than it is to try and get the bucket to push it safely out of the way. So I'll just keep motoring along. Now this will be an example of where it actually pushes over really easy. And again, I don't know if it's more about the root system or is it more about the soil, but again, the machine handled this kind of 6-inch tree with no problem with a fairly big root ball. So maybe the machine is just fine, I don't know. Now here you're going to see me back drag a little bit. I need to fill in the holes that I'm making by pulling out the stumps. It was making the machine a little unstable, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to control the machine as it tips forward into stump holes and things, to fill in those holes as I go. And that'll let me take out this next tree once I flip the stump out of the way. And here's an example of one that just doesn't want to budge. I'm really creaming into this one pretty hard and it doesn't want to go. So what I'm ultimately going to have to do is tilt the bucket and try and attack the roots on the left and right hand side to weaken it up. This is not a pine tree. I don't know what kind of tree it is. It wasn't a pine tree, but you know, again, a similar tree, similar diameter, came right out. Here's a smaller group, but 3 of them all together and they won't budge. What do you think? Does it seem like those hydraulics are straining in a normal way, or is it straining because, again, it's bypassing the hydraulic flow at too low of a pressure? In other words, it should have let it put more horsepower against that stump. I'm such a rookie, I really don't know. One of these days I'll have to compare it to my friend's 75-2, but I get the work done, so I guess that's okay. It just sometimes it seems like I thought it would be able to move things a little bit easier. In here, I'm just kind of backing up to see the progress I'm making, and then level this out a little bit and use the fill dirt that I'm scraping off to level the path to help fill in some of these stump holes from these bigger stumps, just to make this path a little more level, a little smoother. Sometimes you just need to back up and take a look at the progress you've made and decide, is it working, or do you need to try a slightly different strategy? But so far, it's working okay. One thing I am watching here is for snapback. I've already broken my windshield once, and I'm kind of regretting not getting the forestry door, but I just really want to be very careful I don't get a trunk snapping back at me and breaking my windshield again. This will just be yet another example of that TH35 tilt attachment in place there. I scoop up some stuff from the left and then dump it over to the right. And unfortunately, there's really no other way to do that unless you're, using a tilt attachment. I don't see how you would do that with a bucket when you don't really have enough room to turn sideways to scoop the side of the hill. So it just makes it easier in tight situations. That area was maybe a little bit wider. I could come at it from the side and do it with a regular bucket, but the TH35 has definitely earned its place on my farm. And again, a little bit of TH35 leveling off the trail and filling in the stump holes and just really making short work of putting in a relatively flat trail and keeping the slope going in the direction that I want it to be going in fairly easily in a tight space. So this one's going to be a good example of me using the tilt attachment. I come at this thing, it doesn't want to go anywhere. It's got a pretty good root system in there, and I'm going to need to tilt the bucket as far as it'll go on either side and really go at the roots so that I can rip this thing out. Again, it's not a pine tree. There are a lot of different kinds of trees in these woods. Don't recognize this one yet, haven't learned enough, but here the bucket's really showing off how I can turn it way over to the side and really go at its roots on either side and eventually get it out. And this was the one I really was not looking forward to. This is a pine tree. I did try to cut it off as high as I could to give myself as much leverage on it to try and get it out as possible, but this is probably going to be the worst one along the path today. And as usual with most of my projects, on something I thought was going to be really hard, it turned out to be fairly easy. And that's how it's really hard to forecast how long things are going to take. I forecasted that tree was going to take me probably 20 minutes. It took 2 minutes. Sometimes you look at a tree and you think, oh, well, that's only going to take me 2 minutes, and that's the one that takes you 20 minutes. I don't know what to tell you. But certainly this pine went over pretty darn easy. So here we're approaching an area where the oak tree has a root that is actually at the surface, right where the fire break needs to go through. And so what I'm going to need to do there is pile up dirt just over the top of that root. And so that way it'll be protected both when my skid steer goes over it and hopefully protected enough when the bulldozer goes over it. I will have to flag it to make sure the forestry service doesn't scrape through there. So now I got to back up and get some more dirt. I basically have to find some spots where I need to level it out a little bit more and bring a couple of buckets worth of dirt towards that root. So I've decided I'm going to need quite a bit more dirt. I have enough room to do a full 360 or full 180 and get turned around. So I'm going to head all the way back to where we started from and kind of assess the trail in its entirety. This is everything that we've done so far today. This is probably about 250 to 300 feet of trail. So we made very good progress. I'm very happy with the amount of work we got done in literally about 3 hours worth of machine time. So short of stopping for picking the garbage out and moving some of the logs that I needed to move by hand, we did a really good day's work. Got a little bit more to go yet. We're going to come through here, scrape level a little bit, pile some more up on that root, and then we'll get a little bit farther down the trail before the sun's getting too low. So this is basically where we started today. There were all tree stumps ahead of us from here. So everything you're seeing here is what we finished with the machine in one day. And literally just an afternoon. I don't think I got started until almost 2 o'clock. You can't quite see the edge of the bucket there, but I'm basically just kind of grading along, scraping very shallowly along the trail, picking up debris, picking up some dirt, leveling some things out so that we can then put it on top of that oak tree root.
Well, we're back to the point where we finished the chainsawing work on day 2. And over my shoulder is the gap that we were debating, or I was debating, can we get through there? So this gap is 10 feet, but I'll tell you, when you're here with the skid steer, it sure looks a lot narrower. But I think I'm making the right decision to keep these biggest trees and take these out as my next step and head that way. So we made good progress. Basically, I was able to clear the stumps for an entire 2 days worth of work. The part I got to do now is just go back and fill in some of these low spots where when I was taking out stumps, I dug myself some pretty deep ravines here. So I just need to turn around and fill in these and then level this out a little bit, and that'll be it for today. And then hopefully I'm ready for the rainstorm. You can see some of this is still slanted downhill. I'd like to correct a little bit of that, but I don't want to injure the roots of these oak trees that are along the property line. So basically what I'll do is just a little bit of leveling, a little bit of widening, because in some places I'm just barely the 6 feet, but we're basically done for today. So have a great day. Thanks for watching. Hope you find this helpful.